Today I come to ask a question. Is Turdz top 10 all time now in Triple Triad tournament performance? And my answer, for now, is going to be maybe. We'll see where we end up. So I'm going to bring a bunch of stats, some of them kind of straightforward stats, some a little more complicated. Here, it's kind of hard to see. I have underlined the leader in each category and bolded those finishers in the top three, or tied for like second or third. So, if there's three people with three championships, as you see here, and they're tied second through fourth, they all get bolded. It is a bit hard to see. I probably should have figured out some way to graphically show it better. But I compared their total number of wins and other categories. I should say what we're doing. I'm scattered. What are we doing? Um, if we, if we say there are five clear members of the top 10, Delial, Seto, Yojimbo, myself, and Doc Evil. If we curtain off five spots, we have five spots left. And I think there are 10 contenders. If you really wanted to value just that he played only two tournaments and did great, we could throw Karmazin in here. For me, Sujiro is the closest to making this list. Chickeny is actually pretty close. Smokes, Tezuka, Kaus. There are lots of other great players. I think here are the 10 who are fighting for the remaining five slots. And here are their kind of basic stats. Here's their number of tournament games won, or tournament matches won, right? If you win a TTAC match 2-1, I give you credit for one win, not two. Each player's number of championships, their number of finals, their number of semifinals, their number of quarterfinals, and an achievement score, which is 1,000 for each championship, 500 for a finals, 250 for a semis, and 125 for a quarters. This might underrate someone like Kana, whose name is still a matter of dispute because he has so many quarterfinals. He was racking up such a good run in those days. And also, there is some dispute here because tournaments now are shorter. Now, you can certainly argue they have tougher opposition. I will have some stats later that I think do a good job of covering that. But for these stats, obviously, like if Cookie or Sujiro or Kamikaze is playing all 7-round tournaments or mostly 7-round tournaments, and Nightwish and MC and GS are playing 6-round tournaments with the occasional 7, while Akiyama is playing 4 and 5-round tournaments. Like, yeah, he's going to get more icons per tournament unless the opposition really is just that much stronger. So that's my big caveat here. I think the opposition is weaker, but there's enough more rounds that it probably is harder to get high achievement the earlier you play. Turdz has played across many generations, so one of his championships is a 7-rounder, one is a 4-rounder. This also considers all championships equal, right? If you wanted to exclude closed and Rhinoa tournaments or whatever, Turdz could drop down to 3 or 2, depending how you do it. Vid could drop down to 1. Slash could drop down to 1 or 2, I forget which. Nightwish, I think, has only one team Rhinoas, so you could drop him to 0. Kana, definitely you stay at 2. Cookie, at least 2. GS stays at 3. Kazi stays at 2. MC stays at 1. Akiyama stays at 1. So you could do some finagling over this, but this is the core stats, and you can see 6 of them played a somewhat comparable length of time. With Nightwish, GS, MC, and Akiyama playing a bit less. They haven't lasted as long. But you can see Turdz has the most championships in this group. He has the most finals in this group. He has the most semifinals in this group. And he is now tied for most icons in this group. And thus his overall achievement compared to this group, he has the best resume here, right? And even if you significantly downgrade, his shorter tournaments, right? You say you turn 2 of his championships, even if you take them from 1,000 points to 0, he would still be in first in achievement here, right? That would still be, chop 2,000 points off his score. He's still at 5,875. That's still top of this group. Now, I'm not double counting here. So, chopping off 2 from the championship would also chop off 2 finals, 2 semis, and 2 quarterfinals, because those are all from the same runs, right? This is the total number of times he's reached at least that far, not his total number of times finishing exactly quarterfinals. I'm spending way too much time explaining things in this video, but that's okay. My point is, if you just look at what they've done, in terms of winning or making it deep in tournaments, Turdz has the best resume of this group. He is one win away from the most wins, and he is either in the lead or tied for the lead in every other category, and this gives him a substantial lead in overall achievement. And that means Turdz legitimately, if this is what you really value, has a case actually for not just 6th all time, but 5th. Because Turdz is now clear 5th all time in championships. I believe clear, like tied 4th or 5th all time in finals, like maybe clear 4th now in semis, right? Turdz' total resume is now quite clearly the 5th best all time. And if you, insert all of the caveats, you probably still get him 5th. His lead over this group's substantial, right? And Doc Evil didn't play long enough that, his total collected works are going to pass this. I think it's very hard to argue that Turdz hasn't done the 5th most over the time he's played. And that's really impressive. Shout out, of course, to Vid and Slash here, and Nightwish as the other members of the 5,000 plus club. But Turdz is well beyond that. Turdz is over 7,500. And while he gets some benefit of shorter tournaments here, a lot of the tournaments he played were longer tournaments. If we chopped the kind of shorter tournament part of this, I think Turdz drops into the middle lower end of this pack. But he has played very well there. I don't think we should cut it. So okay, Turdz has the most achievement in this group. If we just went on this, we would have Turdz 5th all time. Okay, but what about per tournament, right? If you play a long time, you will start aggregating results. Let's look at per tournament. Now here, we have win percentage in tournaments. We have championship percentage. Out of all the tournaments you played, what percentage were you champion? Finals percentage, semis percentage, quarterfinals percentage, and achievement per tournament. And here we can see, it's not just that Turdz has played a long time. Turdz is achieving at just as good a rate as almost everyone here. Now again, a little easier in the current age to do it, but Akiyama is almost entirely in the current age, and Turdz' overall achievement, despite, winning Vincent when it was a 7-rounder, is almost as high per tournament as Akiyama's. So this is to say, even if we have caveats about it's easier to achieve some of these things in the modern era, Turdz is doing it at a really high rate, even compared to other people in the modern era. Here we can see, Cookie has the weakest case here for top 10, right? Now, Cookie's peak is actually quite high. We'll get to that shortly. But his overall, he essentially has kept playing a lot of tournaments without being as focused on Triple Triad, and these percentage numbers have declined. I also want to say Kamikaze here I think is really impressive. You can see how high his win rate is and how that translates to lower deep finishes. But that's because he's playing almost all 7-rounders. And actually, given that he is on average by some margin the most long-term player here, right? The person who's spending most of their time playing in the very early years. I think Kamikaze's record here is really, really impressive. Obviously, Nightwish and Great Sephiroth stand out, just like unbelievable talents, like the kind of talents where if they could keep this up at some length, they'd be the 2 players that I really think have a shot to compete against those top 4 all time. I think they're the closest. But yeah, you can find some nice percentages, and you can see that Turdz here, his overall win percentage is clearly the lowest, but his actual getting results percentage, and one of the reasons for this is he tends to do better in later rounds than earlier ones. He actually has a higher win percentage in the Icon rounds than he does in pre-Icon rounds. A really nice champ rate with his 4th win. A really nice finals rate. That's, he makes a finals 1 out of every 6 tournaments he plays, and he wins 1 out of every 12. He's making semis in over a quarter of his tournaments, and he's getting an icon in 3 out of every 8. Akiyama, really impressive here. Slash and MC stand out as quite, really good win percentages. Obviously, it's hard not to look at this one and be like, probably the 3 best players here are Nightwish and GS, followed by Kamikaze, right? I just, looking at the win percentage and, some of the other percentages, that's what jumps out at me. I think it would be really hard to fill out the 6 through 10 without including Nightwish, GS, and Kamikaze. I think those have to be 3 of the slots, personally, and the argument is over who fills the other 2. And Turdz is kind of middle of the pack per tournament, though that achievement per tournament, again, is above middle of the pack, but also has done it for the longest and has done the most. So by that standard, Turdz has a really good case for taking one of those 2 remaining spots. Really good case. All right. Here's some stats I like that I think get to the heart of matters a little better. Peak Elo. Elo adjusts for strength of opposition, and it also means, like, if you have a really fantastic run and then drop off, that drop off doesn't affect your peak Elo, right? Your peak Elo takes the one moment in time when you were most dominant, beating the best opponents, and scores you for that. And here we can see that I think Great Sephiroth and the Polish brothers really dominant, though Kazi and Akiyama pretty close to Nightwish. Note, however, this does not include Nightwish's 2 Rhinoa wins. I don't include them in Elo because they'd be complicated to include because the whole team thing and we don't have specific results, which is to say Nightwish is already 3rd without his 2 best results being included in this one. So Nightwish, Great Sephiroth, and MC I think are clearly ahead of the pack, but Kamikaze, Akiyama, Kana are really good. And, VidTurdz and Slash are fantastic. Slash is really hurt here as well by the Rhinoas not being included. Slash could get a big bump here. And again, Cookie is great, and I wanted to include him because I wanted to give a sense of how these players compared to someone who, as of 2008, Kaus writes an article having him as like the 2nd greatest of all time. So this is to say how strong this group is, that comparing them to someone who quite reasonably was once considered a top 2 or 3 player of all time, these players are even better. So yeah, by this one, I think Turdz' peak is not as strong, but I will say, I think Turdz is playing amazingly right now, and he is at his peak Elo right now, right? Should he have another good tournament, not even necessarily winning, but like making the finals or making the semis and beating someone strong, that's going to easily add for his peak, like that moment before he loses, another 20, 30 points to his resume, and it's very easy to imagine him getting past Vid or near Vid and potentially nearer to the higher crew if he keeps playing how he's playing. So he's definitely at the lower end here, and I think, if you want just the people who reach the highest level, it's Great Sephiroth and the Polish brothers. But I think Turdz is better here than he looks. I think Slash is too, for that matter. Performance takes every tournament game you've played and figures out what your Elo performance is. So Elo starts at a base number and it moves up and down as you win and lose. This doesn't take a starting point. It just says, if I knew all your results, what would I say your Elo is? Without any starting point to move it from. And if that's the case, we get Turdz at 2210. Again, a longer term player is going to, in general, bring these kind of rate numbers down. While his total numbers were very good, he's going to look a little worse by this. We can still see him. He's 7th of 10. That's middle of the pack. And this is going to be the hardest number for him to move. I'm not sure how seriously we should take it. Credit to Akiyama, who just started playing and was immediately fantastic. Dominates this category. One thing I thought would be interesting was to look at how these players perform against each other. Now, I don't think this is super meaningful because, Slash of Time, for instance, has a really good win rate against the top 4 of all time. But the top 4 are not included here, right? So Slash of Time's better, more impressive win rates and where others drop off isn't included. Also, it's really important to beat people weaker than you, right? And this is a group of people of comparable strength. But I thought it would be interesting to look at how each player in this group performed when they played other players in the group. And the best records were Great Sephiroth, Akiyama, and MC, with Kana also the only other player significantly over 50%, though Vid is above 50% as well. Turdz does not look so good in that one either. Yeah. And finally, I have Peak Run, which I did a longer video series about this, but it takes a player's most dominant run. I look at their win percentage. So, for instance, Great Sephiroth says 52 and 16, so he has a run of tournaments where he wins 52 games and loses 16. That's 76.5% over that period. I also took his ELO performance for that run, which is 2315. And the last number, I forget exactly how I calculated it, but it's basically like, what's the worst strength you could possibly have been where you could have lucked into this performance? So the more games you played, the closer that's going to be to the number we see. The idea is this is a number, right? If I play 5 games, it's easier to have a high performance than if I play 20, right? It's hard to maintain it 4 times as long. This says the longer you maintained it, the more I'm confident this is your actual skill level. And the shorter time you maintained it, the further this number will be away from that 2315 you see down to 2242. So each one's going to drop off from that first number depending on how many games were played. Here, MC's 39 and 11 run is probably the standout. The performance at 2359 tells you not only is it the win percentage on that the highest of any of these runs, but also it was against some of the strongest opposition. Incredible run from MC. MC has quite arguably the best peak of any player here, though GS and Nightwish are very, very close. And I think that's a clear top 3, given that Kamikaze only maintained win percentages close to them for a shorter period of time, as did Slash and Cookie, who also maintained around 75%, but not for as long, right? MC did it for 50 games, GS and Nightwish did it for almost 70, Cookie did it for 44, but Cookie and Kazi did it for amounts in the 30s. So here's where I think the case for Turdz being top of this group starts coming apart a little, right? He has a really good peak run, but it's a little lower win percentage than the others once you include how strong his opposition has been. And this run is his current run that he's currently on, basically in the return. Once you adjust for the fact that he's had really tough opposition, and where I said like total number of finals or semis is helped by playing now, win rate is hurt by playing now because the opposition average is so strong. But ELO can help kind of adjust for this. It can say, okay, what's your win rate? And I'm going to adjust it for your competition. That's why I really like ELO. So here we can see Turdz has not quite reached the level of the very top of this group, but it's pretty close. But he's not maintained it as long, right? It's a significantly shorter run. It's a little bit lower win percentage than Vid's, similar ELO performance, but Vid did it 50 games and Turdz has done it 28. Turdz does not have the continuous streak of dominance that other players have had, but he can reach their level, and I'm really hopeful he maintains it in this current run. But this would be the case against him, right? It's not that he accumulated, right? It's not that he's just played longer than them so he has more results, because he's actually put up results at a similar rate or a better rate than many people in this field. It's that he hasn't had that one incredibly dominant run in the same way I think all of the others in this group kind of have. All of the others have had either a stronger or a longer run of dominance than Turdz has had. And so he probably has the lowest peak, though there's a case this underrates it a little. It's still a very good peak. It's not much behind. But I think the argument would be that essentially he hit this really high level in kind of 2008, 2009. Then he dropped off for a while, had intermittent results, and now is playing, I think, at the clear top of his game ever, and could easily be about to put up a run that wipes a lot of these people. But we haven't seen it yet. All in all, I have my Hall of Fame stat. It's my go-to all-time ranking. Where does Turdz land? Well, I have Great Sephiroth as the clear best of this group, followed by the Polish brothers, and then Kamikaze, Kana, and then Turdz has jumped up. Before this last tournament, I had Turdz at the very bottom of this group. And with this win, beating really strong opposition, like Delial in the semifinals, Stuff a difficult finals, who had done well enough in the tournament that Stuff actually is pretty highly rated at this point. But especially with the win over Deli in the semifinals, Turdz jumps to just behind Kana, a hair out of 10th. I currently have Turdz 11th. Now, note, Slash of Time has been 10th in the past. Like, if Slash of Time wants to call himself a top 10 player, or even like a top 7 player, I have no problem with that. I think that's very reasonable. I've talked about that with him. I think there's a very good case that the way I did these numbers underrates him. what I want to say is I think there are 12 to 14 people who have a really good case for being top 10 all time. This happens to be my list. But Vid and Akiyama do have a case. I think it's a weaker case, and I think Cookie probably doesn't have a case at this point in time at top 10, despite obviously being a tremendous player. I think Vid and Akiyama, it's an outside case. But any of the top 12, and Turdz is now in that top 12, which is the highest I've ever ranked him, have a serious case at being top 10. And one or two tournaments from now, I expect Turdz to break into the top 10. He has done so much more than anyone else here has done in some ways. And he looks to be in the best form he's ever been in. So even if he puts up like medium results, this is a stat that tends not to penalize you too much for losing, and it wants you to play. It does reward playing. Turdz is likely to go up at least a little bit. It's hard for him to go up a ton, both because like there's a big jump to Kamikaze and MC and Nightwish, and also because his lower win percentage is hard to move, right? When you've played a lot, your win percentage kind of locks in, and that's going to be a number that means his maximum possible score is a little limited. But I think Turdz can certainly consider himself top 10 all time, and I have him 11th and knocking on the door. And that's awesome to see, because Turdz is, as we all know, a lovely guy and a tremendous player. And it's cool to see the level he's currently playing at. And I think if you look at these players and think, who would you want to play? I don't think you want to play Turdz. Like, I mean, obviously, many of the others here are not active, but current Turdz would not be my pick of who to go against here if I wanted to get a win. So anyway, that's my update on Turdz' all-time spot. I think with this victory, he has jumped up to 11th all-time. Stuff, having played 5 tournaments total, I now have in the low 60s all-time. Now, he's really variable because you get one finals run. And note, it was a 4-round run to the finals. Like, going 4-1 is, it's not like going 2-1 and making a finals. So, with Stuff's run, he really has the potential to start moving up the list quickly if he can put together another decent run or two in his next few tournaments. So that's really cool to see as well, because it's really hard to get that high up on the list. There are a lot of great players in that range, and we'll see where Stuff can go from there. But I wanted to focus on Turdz here, and Turdz is my current number 11 all time. Congratulations. Hope these stats were vaguely interesting. If anyone has any thoughts on the other pages of stats and wants to be like, hell yeah, Great Sephiroth was so good, please let me know.